Think buying a home right now is out of reach? Well, here's the truth. It's not as far out of reach as you might think. Let me show you exactly how to make it happen without draining your savings account. The number one topic I think for this most recent election was inflation and homes are too expensive. And so that's what they talked about. How do we bring these home prices down? Here's the thing. I don't think they are coming down. What we need to do is figure out how you can get into a house right now. Let's look at some numbers anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and just feed into the haters for a second here. Show you some numbers that the news likes to show you that it is unaffordable right now. The median household income in the United States has increased from $22,420 a year starting in 1984 to $70,784 in 2022. So again, this one's a couple years behind. Let me show you this quick graph. Increasing income housing gap. This is a fun little visual that puts it all in perspective. The sucker goes all the way back to 1984. You can see the gap, they call it a price to income ratio. So back then in the 1980s, the price was 3.5%. And as you can see, we've been slowly getting further and further away from that until 2022, we're sitting at a price to income ratio of 5.8. So yes, the home values are going up faster than income, the income you receive on average. So here's where I'm gonna challenge you a little bit. If we look at just the median number for the entire United States, sure. Yeah, overall, it is a little expensive, and it's definitely more expensive than it was in the 80s. This is a report from Harvard. So these guys are talking about, yes, the price to income ratio has reached a record high. However, you have to look at regional areas and not at just an overall across the United States. So this graph's pretty cool because it shows us the areas that are expensive. But look at the entire United States. I mean, there's so many pockets where they're under 3 right now. Right here in Arizona, we're right in that in between 5 and 8. So we're pretty much right at the average across the US. So again, it is a little bit more expensive right now. But guess what? Did you know that the United States is a pretty big place? Did you know that you don't have to live where you currently are just because you have a job here? We live in a virtual world now. You can pretty much work from anywhere. Most people work from home anyway. You can go anywhere. Just because you can't afford a home here doesn't mean that they're unaffordable everywhere. I hate excuses because if you really truly want to buy a home, there is options. You might have to sacrifice. My very first house, I know I've shared this story a ton of times, same exact thing. I could not afford the house I wanted in the area that I wanted to live. So I had to sacrifice location. I had to drive almost 45 minutes to work every single day when I had that first house. Because I liked the house, it was bigger and it worked for my needs at that time and I didn't want to live in a condo. If I'd have bought that condo, it definitely would have made me probably more money because it was in a better location. But that's what worked for me, that's how I chose to do it. So just know that you do not have to buy the most expensive home out there. If you live in Scottsdale right now and it's too expensive to buy in Scottsdale, look around you, check other areas out, be willing to drive a little bit further. You have options. Tip number 2, which is probably my favorite tip because this was the original idea I had that made me realize maybe I can afford homeownership and was what got me to take the actual loan application. If you're young and you're single and you don't have a family, if you buy your first house, why not rent out some of those other rooms to help offset that mortgage payment? When I moved out to the Valley, I moved into Mesa and I was renting a room for $500 a month. I was working at a bank and so I got to see like what mortgage payments were. So I just did the math and I was like, wait a minute, if I'm paying $500 and these other guys are, this guy's getting $1,500 a month from us every single month. His mortgage can't be much more than that. Keep in mind, this was back in 2007, so a little different time frame. You can use that same example today. So let's say you have a mortgage for $2,500 a month, but you've got 2 extra bedrooms or you could, maybe a room and a den. You could charge $800 per room. So that way you'd only end up paying $900 of that mortgage if you have 2 other roommates given $800 a piece. You own the house. You're a landlord living in your own damn house. Sometimes you just gotta get a little bit creative and think outside the box to make homeownership a reality. Tip 3, my favorite thing in the world to talk about. Down payment assistance. There's 2 types of people, right? They say home prices are too expensive. What they really mean is they can't afford the down payment. If you're looking at the median home price of, $400,000, actually I think it's a touch above that. It's like $485,000 right now. But let's say you're looking at these $400,000 houses, and even at the minimum down payment with an FHA loan, that's $14,000. And that doesn't even include closing costs, which are gonna be like another $10,000. So now we're talking $24,000. If you don't have $24,000 saved up, you can't buy that $400,000 house. Same thing if you get cheaper. It's just the down payment becomes too much. But guess what? There are down payment assistance programs for that. I was recently at an event and I was chatting with this young guy. He was tired of paying rent. He's like,
everything around me is so expensive. It's gonna take me forever to save up for that down payment.
and so I said, well, why don't you look into one of those down payment assistance programs? You know that there's lots of them out there. And he's like,
I thought that was a myth. I didn't think that was real. Down payment assistance is real? I thought like that it just was like something that people talk about.
it is real. I do it every single day. I don't know how many more examples I can show you. I have people buying houses with very little to sometimes nothing out of pocket. If cash is the only thing holding you back right now, if you check all the other boxes to be able to buy a house, but you don't have a down payment, on average, most of my clients are closing with $3,000 or less. Don't make down payment an excuse. It's no good. Buying a house is more in reach than you think. It starts right here with the mindset. The news is gonna tell you something else. They're gonna share those median numbers. Everybody can twist numbers to make them sound however they want them to sound. But at the end of the day, your situation is yours. Look at where you're spending. How much money are you spending in rent? Could that money go towards a mortgage? What are your plans 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now? That's the one thing that I think really helped me when I bought that house. I thought a few years into the future. I knew going into it was a long-term investment. So if you can have that mindset, knowing it's a long-term investment that you can handle, that you can afford, if I approve you for the loan, you can afford it. Straight up. It's that simple. So stop making excuses. If you want to make homeownership a reality, it is closer than you think. Give me a call today. I'd be happy to discuss your options. Doesn't cost anything to give me a phone call.